Welcome back. So today we're going to take a look at NF Audio's NM2. So NF Audio is a company that people have recommended. I listened to their sets in the past, and I've always wanted to have an opportunity to it. And thankfully, and many thanks to KeepHifi, they took on the brand NF Audio and were nice enough to send me this review sample of the NM2. So many thanks to them. It's about $90 on their website, and I will post a link later. But it does come with this nice earphone case, which is a little nicer than you typically find. The shells and cable itself, maybe a little light for $90. It's a kind of a smoked plastic shell, no metal nozzle, and kind of a grill that you'd find on some budget sets. Cable itself, I think it's it's probably a 2-core, 4-core, something like that, twisted black. Plastic coating, not too bad. And the connectors themselves are actually QDC connectors. So if you have your KZ cable, you might want to swap that in for the black twisted one if that's your thing. Box itself looks pretty nice. I'm sure some of the budget went to that. So NF Audio really talks about real monitoring earphones, and I didn't post the other part of it where they're actually talk about companies who do fake monitoring earphones, but their version of real monitoring earphones pays more attention to the real expression of each instrument and timbre, easier to hear melody and harmony, and cultivating good listening habits. So not too sure what that really means, but let's take a look at the graph and see what that means. So here we go. So Blonde BL03, probably one of the highest selling IEMs ever. Quite a bit of bass. Goes through the mids, quite natural mids. People like the mids. A little bit too much bass, as you can see over the Harman target. And the gain area, which is, the kind of the most outstanding factor on NF Audio here, you'll see that, but the blonde level, and I've talked about this many, many times, it's a bit lower than Harman, it's a bit lower than some of their sets, but it's about, I think, 7 decibels or so from the bass. And it's just a very easygoing gain area, and people like it. It's not all that fatiguing, but there's enough detail there that it's a very likable level. And then you get Tape Pro, which is probably one of the most disliked sets ever released, and you can see its gain level is quite a bit more than BL03, and in between you have shades of dislike, right? People love this level, and the further you go away and the further you go above 10 decibels, your pool of people who are going to like that sound shrinks considerably. And NF Audio, I think, kind of shot a little too high on this one, and it's just a very thin, super detailed. It's very good on certain instruments, but it drags the whole midsection up with it, and you end up with very thin, fatiguing mids is really what it sounds like. So they tried to balance it out here. They put a good amount of bass, not BL03 bass, but this bass is actually quite nice, and this whole part right here is actually quite nice, but as soon as you start climbing this ramp, it's a little bit too much for actual vocals. And I understand that they pay attention to instruments, and this very much emphasizes instruments and detail, and all that's good, but it was really at the expense of vocals that you can listen to for any amount of time. Treble itself actually drops down, probably as it should, because this is so high. They really needed to knock this down a little bit, so you get this standard drop from 5 to, or from 4 to 8 almost, and that's kind of standard. But yeah, when you're thinking about NM2, you really do have to think about, if you've ever heard of BL03 and you want to really amp it up, especially at 4K, that much, and understand that Tape Pro was, one of those sets that no one can really listen to. I think they just, went a little bit too in the realm of Tape Pro for this one to be easygoing on my ears, at least. So, as I said, it has this weird hyper detailed sound, but it's very unforgiving on bad recordings because of that gain area. I mean, you're essentially amplifying and making that whole area very thin, and a bad recording is just going to be like a saw blade in your ear. So check out Republica's Ready to Go. That one will do wonders for your ears. So on top of that, the stage is very flat, almost for the same reason. Everything gets kind of smashed in your face, and it's all on top of another, and super fatiguing at these super high gain levels. So yeah, it's kind of a double whammy of fatigue there. So the sound generally, it does have this boosted V shape. Like you can see, it's where blonde is sort of a boosted and then a lower down here, kind of slopes down. NM has a boost or kind of a slightly boosted bass here and then shot up here, and then tape even went even higher. So you can sort of get a general feel for this one is going to be a little bit bright, but still a little boosted, and it does have this lower treble emphasis like I talked about. The bass by far is the best part. It's fast enough and controlled enough, but it really needed that mid bass to counter the upper mid thinness. And like I said, some of these likable sets do bump up your mid bass above Harmon for that reason. It adds a little warmth, and there's a nice little thickness to note weight. All that carries through into your mids quite well. But they really needed to balance out that bit right there, is which really why they did it. So I would call it, tuning with healthy doses of bass and lower treble. I think they just picked those levels to be somewhat balanced, because one needed the other one. So some pretty good texture, and it's got a very satisfying level. But yeah, clearly the best part of this set. The mids, the lower fits well against those decent bass, like Saturn, We Miss You by Trip the Witch. Not too bad. If you can find a track that sort of straddles the gain line or is only on the lower side of the mids, it actually sounds pretty normal. But then you shift upper to like Dua Lipa's Levitating, and just super fatiguing and thin, and it just clearly gets dragged right up that ramp, and it's just not good. So resolution detail is good, but the sound, like I said, is over sharpened, over detailed, kind of over processed, overdone. It's a lot of overs. So lowering the volume will help you. Then you'll get some recessed mids, which isn't all that great either. But 4K fans will definitely notice that little bit of extra emphasis in the vocals, driving them thin and off natural. So 4K, for those of you fans of Lark 4K or any other set which has bumped up 4K beyond reason, it's a very intense, fatiguing sound, but it sounds hyper-detailed, and that's very much what you get here. And I think in their eyes, that's a great thing for monitoring, so I think that's why they do it. So on the treble, you get that lower treble emphasis, like I said, and then it drops down to prevent an overly bright side on sound on guitars, and it does extend well. I think the rest of the treble is okay. It just sounds a bit inconsistent. There's a bunch of peaks there and dips, and it's okay, though. The upper part is a whole lot easier to digest than the lower part. So the way instruments hit in Go-Go Penguin, Signal and Noise, it's the way they straddle that gain, very much more pleasing than almost any tracks that have vocals. So if you are a fan or your playlist or your library is not a whole lot of vocals, this one is probably for you. So like I said, the stage is a bit flat and it's really in your face, and you still get some imaging and separation because of that gain area. You get a whole lot of boost and detail there. So that part isn't really sacrificed despite that bass level, but at the end of the day, it's a little hard to take when it's that flat in your face. So that's about it. It's about all I have to say on the NM2. So thank you guys again for tuning in, and I will see you next time.